We had the rand trading as strong as R6.62 this morning. A little bit weaker than that now, but it looks like the momentum is there for the currency at the moment.
Yeah, it certainly does seem that way, Steve. And it does just seem that the market is convinced that global liquidity will remain fairly high for a number of months still, and as a result we're starting to see a second wave since around February of this year surge into emerging market and pro-cyclical assets. Those obviously with high yields such as South Africa offer particular value for these foreign investors, and we've seen some renewed bond inflows into South Africa as a result.
Well, we had Brazil last week coming out imposing more taxes and really trying to stop that flow of hot money into Brazil, but it seems to have not worked very well because that real also been strengthening.
Well, absolutely, and obviously there's been a lot of debate and talk about whether or not South Africa should or should not be imposing capital controls of foreign investments, and I think that's also quite a strong theme when it comes to the rand, because we're starting to see that investors feel that in South Africa's case it's very easy to bring your money in and easy to take it out. So although the Brazilian real has, as you say, defied the authorities, I think the fact that South Africa isn't going down that route, rather just accumulating reserves in a gradual fashion, I think also augurs well for extended rand strength.
Well, looking at those commodity prices, we had them also strengthening last week. That gold price up at new all-time highs, copper prices also up. And if you look at other commodity currencies like the Australian dollar, we've seen that hitting a 29-year high against the US dollar of $1.05. So it looks like it really is quite broad-based for EM and commodity currencies.
It does, Stephen. There's obviously been a huge search for commodity-based currencies, but it's interesting to note that the rand has actually underperformed some of its commodity-based currency peers, which again kind of leads me to believe that the rand is really benefiting from its high yields in particular, and also to a degree from the lack of kind of capital controls, and possibly that explains some of the rand's strength against those funding currencies. But against the commodity-based peers, we actually aren't doing as well as one might suspect.
And how about against the euro and the pound? Because as you said, we usually focus on the dollar. Looking across the other crosses, has the rand also been on a strengthening bias?
Yeah, you see there we haven't made nearly as much gains over the past month, and it just shows you that we are also in the throes of a weak dollar environment, which is again a function of this liquidity. The ECB has been tightening rates, the Fed, there's still debate about whether or not there's even going to be a Q3. Bottom line is liquidity and interest rates in the States remains abundant, and as a result the dollar remains under pressure. Even though we've seen signs of some encouraging data out of the States, if one looks at the employment figures and things like that, inflation starting to creep up there as well. The Fed does not look like it's going to be tightening anytime soon, and as a result the dollar remains under pressure. And the rand is one of those currencies that is being bought and funded through US interest rates.
So we've got South Africa's high yields, we have high commodity prices at the moment. We've also had some pretty good economic data coming out locally over the past couple of weeks. I think back to last week we had manufacturing numbers coming in stronger than expected. We've had PMI recently, vehicle sales, and this all augurs well for the currency, doesn't it?
Absolutely, Stephen. That's one of the things that we were concerned about with the rand this year. We thought that it would probably underperform a lot of its emerging market counterparts on a GDP differential perspective. And although that still might be the case, I think that there's no doubt that growth is surprising most to the upside. And you mentioned the figures already. If mining production impresses this week, it'll just add more credence to a more buoyant GDP figure for the first quarter of this year. And then over and above this encouraging economic data flow, we've also seen some kind of encouraging FDI flow. Metarex potentially being bought out by a Brazilian company. So it's all looking pretty good for the rand at the moment, and it's very difficult to go up against this bullish tide.
Where would you expect the rand to go from these levels? Do you think we are going to start to meet some resistance again?
I'm not 100% sure that we're going to run into too much resistance, because I think that a lot of the strength has actually taken place in fairly thin volumes. So if we start seeing more of the institutional market, especially abroad, climbing onto the bandwagon, then this rand could actually probably strengthen a bit further before it starts weakening. So in a nutshell, I don't think market position is exceptionally stretched at this stage. I think that we could go a little bit further.